Intimacy of touch with Moon in Gemini. When you're close in thought but far from the skin you inhabit, touch, for the Moon in Gemini, is not your first instinct, but it is a fascination. You approach intimacy through the mind, through observation, through curiosity. You notice the way someone gestures when they speak, how their hand trembles when nervous, how their foot taps while thinking. You track everything. But when it comes to your own body, being touched, being held, something in you flickers away. Not because you don't want it, but because staying physically present requires emotional stillness. And stillness is where your Moon gets restless. You long to be known in motion, to be understood through conversation, questions, shared laughter. That is your version of closeness. So when someone reaches for your hand instead of your mind, you may feel exposed, like they've bypassed your best defense, your wit, your story, your mental speed, and landed somewhere you didn't prepare. And instead of softening, you shift. You joke, you analyze, you talk through the moment instead of sinking into it. Moon in Gemini processes emotion through intellect. You name your feelings before you feel them. You're faster to explain why you're sad than to cry, faster to offer an insight than to receive a gesture. Touch becomes something you navigate through understanding. Why are they reaching for me now? What do they want? What does this mean? And by the time your mind is done mapping it, the moment has passed. In the beginning of relationships, this shows up as charm. You flirt through conversation. You bond through shared ideas. You graze arms casually, testing connection without letting it land. But as the relationship deepens, your body begins to crave more presence, more quiet contact, more weight. And suddenly, the skin you've treated like an afterthought starts to speak. I want to be touched, not just understood. I want to be felt, not just figured out. But you don't always know how to ask. You may hint, you may initiate in playful ways, but when the intimacy turns serious, when someone touches you with slowness or holds you in silence, you may tense, because that kind of touch demands emotional surrender. It invites you to stop thinking, to be nowhere else but inside your body. And for Moon in Gemini, that's terrifying, because your thoughts are where you hide. And touch, it's where you're found. Sometimes you intellectualize your discomfort. I'm just not a touchy person. Or, affection's nice, but we connect in other ways. But deep down, you know that isn't always true. What's harder for you is not physical contact. It's contact without distraction, touch without commentary, connection without movement. You can handle passion, you can handle play, but what undoes you is quiet, consistent presence. Someone's hand on your chest while you say nothing. Someone's arms around you with no reason at all. That's when your mind goes silent, and your Moon doesn't know what to do. To grow in this intimacy, you must begin to stay. Stay when your partner leans into you. Stay when your body flinches out of old instinct. Stay when silence falls and touch becomes the language. You must learn that you don't need to narrate every sensation, that love doesn't always require articulation, that sometimes the truest intimacy is wordless, a hand resting on your lower back, a forehead pressed to yours, a breath you share in the quiet. And you must learn to trust that your body is not betraying you when it wants more, that your desire for physical closeness does not make you weak or simple or needy. It makes you present. And presence is where your Moon becomes whole. Because when you let yourself be touched, not just as a concept, not just as a body in motion, but as a soul and skin, something shifts. The thoughts slow, the armor thins, the intimacy deepens, and you realize connection doesn't always come from what's said. Sometimes it comes from the heat between two people who finally stop speaking and simply feel, together, here, now. Intimacy of sensate with Moon in Gemini. When you perceive everything, but forget to absorb what you feel. With the Moon in Gemini, your intimacy begins in awareness. You notice everything, the subtle inflections in someone's voice, the slight shift in their posture, the rapid blink when they're holding something back. You are a collector of impressions, a natural scanner of atmospheres. Every room becomes a story. Every person becomes a study. But when intimacy of sensate asks you to slow down, not to observe, but to inhabit the sensory moment, you hesitate. You flit. You think about the experience, but you don't always let it touch you. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the planet of mind and movement. And so your emotional body is restless, analytical, wired to translate sensation into meaning. You might smell your partner's shampoo and suddenly remember a memory from 10 years ago. You hear a tone of voice and launch into a full inner dialogue about its implications. You process sensation by talking through it, to yourself, to others, to the air. But true sensate intimacy doesn't want interpretation. It wants immersion. This is where your challenge begins. You seek stimulation more than saturation. You want to taste everything, but lightly. Explore everything, but quickly. Stay too long in one sensory state, and you grow anxious. You want newness, not depth. But the intimacy of sensate asks you to stay inside the texture of a moment. To let the sound of someone's breath actually affect you. To feel their skin not as a curiosity, but as an emotional tether. And for your moon, this kind of presence can feel like losing control. You are most comfortable when love is light, witty, verbal. But when the mood shifts into something slower, when a gaze lingers, when music plays without words, when someone kisses you and expects you to feel it rather than narrate it, you may pull back. Not because you're cold, but because your inner world hasn't learned how to settle. You've trained yourself to escape through observation, to be near sensation, but not fully in it. And so your relationships may begin to feel thin at the edges. You are affectionate, playful, curious, but your partner may feel like you're never quite with them. Like you're always half a second ahead, interpreting the moment instead of inhabiting it. They might say, "I feel like you're watching us from outside yourself." And they're not wrong, because Gemini moon protects itself through detachment, not by walls, but by speed. To shift this, you must begin to practice stillness, not in body, but in attention. When someone speaks to you, listen not just with your ears, but with your breath. When they touch you, don't move immediately. Feel the weight of their presence. Let silence arrive without filling it. Let sensation arrive without naming it. You are a master of meaning, but now, your intimacy asks for embodiment. You must also learn to trust that sensation can hold you. That you don't have to understand every moment to be safe in it. That your skin, your ears, your eyes are not just collectors of data, but doorways to connection. You are not betraying your intelligence by feeling more deeply. You are expanding it. Because emotional brilliance is not just analysis, it is absorption. This kind of intimacy transforms you. The flickers of touch you once brushed past begin to settle in your chest. The scent of someone's clothes stays with you, not as trivia, but as comfort. The taste of food shared becomes memory, not just detail. You no longer feel like a visitor in your own body. You begin to belong to the moment, to love as a full sensory presence, not just a quicksilver mind. Because for you, Gemini moon, true intimacy is not found in how much you can notice. It is found in what you allow to land. And when you do, when you let the texture of connection seep in rather than be translated, you discover something surprising. Your body is not a place to escape. It is a portal, and it's been waiting for you to come home. Intimacy of kindness with moon in Gemini. When you care through conversation, but forget to stay long enough to soothe. Kindness, for the moon in Gemini, is fluent in language. You show love through words, quick check-ins, clever reassurance, gentle teasing that hides genuine concern. You know how to comfort someone in real time, how to talk them out of a spiral, how to make them laugh when they're on the edge of tears. Your kindness is agile, responsive, mentally attuned. But it often lives in the moment. And when the moment passes, so does your attention. Because the intimacy of kindness asks for something your moon resists. Emotional anchoring. Not just being there in the crisis, but staying afterward. Not just saying the right thing, but offering a consistent softness that requires no performance. For you, love is mental availability. You'll reply in seconds, talk all night, brainstorm solutions. But when kindness asks for quiet constancy, a hand held in silence, a repeated gesture without novelty, you sometimes forget to offer it. Not out of coldness, but because you assume connection must be stimulating to be real. You also mistake niceness for kindness. You can be charming, accommodating, easy to be around. You rarely raise your voice. You rarely explode. But this doesn't mean your emotional presence is soothing. Sometimes, the partner beside you needs your heart, not your wit. They don't want a clever reframe. They want to be felt with. And that, for a moon ruled by Mercury, is harder than it seems. Because it means staying inside one emotion, even when it stops being interesting. And this is where your kindness can accidentally turn performative. You do the thoughtful thing. You say the considerate line. But your partner may feel you're somewhere else, already thinking ahead, already composing a different dialogue. You love through movement. But kindness, true intimacy of kindness, often lives in slowness. In the boring, repetitive, emotionally dense parts of connection that require presence more than polish. You also tend to avoid emotional heaviness by lightening the mood. You make jokes, offer distractions, steer the conversation elsewhere. But this can leave those you love feeling skipped over. Their sadness becomes something to manage, not something to meet. And your kindness, instead of feeling warm, begins to feel distant, like a script, not a salve. To deepen in this kind of intimacy, you must practice staying longer than your comfort. Sit with your partner when their grief has no tidy edge. Listen without problem solving. Ask, "What do you need?" and stay present through the answer, even if it's nothing, even if it's silence, even if it's inconvenient. Kindness for you must become less about fixing and more about holding, not hands, emotions. And with yourself, your inner dialogue needs that same kindness. You narrate your feelings so quickly you forget to care for them. You jump to insight and skip over comfort. You tell yourself, "This is fine, I get it," instead of saying, "This hurts, I need time." Your own kindness must slow down enough to feel like companionship, not commentary. When you embody this, your love becomes multidimensional. Your words soften. Your presence lingers. Your kindness expands beyond momentary cleverness into something sacred, reliability. The kind that says, "I won't disappear when the energy shifts. I'll be here, even when it's not bright or exciting or easy." Because kindness to your Gemini moon will never be about silence, but it can be about depth. And when your mind learns to stay long enough to soothe, your heart learns how to hold. Not just speak, not just sparkle, but stay. And in that staying, your care becomes unforgettable, not because it dazzled, but because it didn't leave. Intimacy of growth with Moon in Gemini. When you evolve by learning, but struggle to stay present in the becoming. Growth is exhilarating to the Moon in Gemini. You crave it, thrive on it, chase it through books, conversations, travel, and novelty. You hunger for new ideas, new ways of being, new versions of yourself and those you love. But the intimacy of growth isn't just about expansion. It's about staying close while changing, about being seen during the messy middle. And this, for your moon, can feel deeply unsettling, because you'd rather leap to the insight than linger in the transformation. Your instinct is to intellectualize every shift. You don't sit in the discomfort, you describe it. You don't cry, you explain why the crying makes sense. You're already 2 steps ahead, narrating the lesson while the emotion is still unfolding. You seek safety and understanding. But real growth, the kind that intimacy demands, doesn't move at the speed of thought. It moves through uncertainty, through the awkward, unformed, emotionally chaotic spaces your Gemini moon is wired to escape. In relationships, you support your partner's evolution with enthusiasm, so long as you can understand it. You ask thoughtful questions, offer advice, recommend resources. You are their biggest cheerleader when growth is exciting, verbal, or visible. But when their growth turns inward, when it becomes slow, silent, identity disrupting, you grow restless. You want to help, but you don't know how to witness without analyzing. You want to feel close, but you don't know how to sit inside a change you can't immediately define. This is where your presence starts to flicker. Not because you don't care, but because you feel powerless when you can't contribute through conversation. You begin to drift, to distract yourself. You turn to other stimuli while your partner is still processing. You think they need space. And sometimes they do, but other times they just needed you to stay, without solving, without speeding things up. And when you're the one growing, your moon often masks it behind chatter. You tell your partner what you're learning. You turn your self-discovery into dialogue. But intimacy of growth asks for more than articulation. It asks for vulnerability inside the shift. To say, "I don't know who I'm becoming yet. Can you hold me anyway?" That rawness is terrifying for Gemini moon, who prefers clarity to confusion. But love that grows requires both. You may also find yourself jumping from one identity to the next, one theory to another, one emotional insight to a fresh obsession, hoping that motion will stand in for meaning. But intimacy of growth is not about how many times you change. It's about who stays with you while you do. And that includes you. You must stay with yourself through the molting, through the days where nothing makes sense, through the pauses in your own progress. To honor this intimacy, you must practice emotional patience. Learn to ask your partner, how can I support your becoming even if I don't understand it yet? And learn to say, I'm in a season of change. I don't have answers, but I want to be held, not hurried. Create space for messy chapters. Let love stretch instead of snap. Because when your Gemini moon stops skipping ahead to the conclusion and starts listening to the heartbeat of what's becoming, you transform the way you love. You become someone who doesn't just admire growth. You become someone who can walk beside it, gently, curiously, willingly uncertain. And that is where your evolution deepens, not just in what you learn, but in how you stay, in how you let love grow not just through insight, but through endurance, through presence, through the courage to be known. Mid-sentence, not just when the story is ready to be told. Intimacy of activity with Moon in Gemini. When doing things together feels like connection until it becomes distraction. Activity is how the Moon in Gemini stays close without getting stuck. You bond through movement. Errands together, spontaneous outings, lively conversations while assembling furniture, or side-by-side tasks that keep your minds engaged. Shared experiences are your fuel. They offer you novelty, stimulation, and the sense that love is happening. But when intimacy of activity asks you to stay with one rhythm, to move together without moving away, you may find yourself subtly slipping out of sync, even in the same room. You thrive on shared motion. When your partner joins you in your hobbies, chats through chores, or pings ideas back and forth across the table, you feel alive. You associate activity with aliveness, and aliveness with intimacy. The danger, though, is that you often use activity to avoid emotional stillness. You may fill the space with plans and conversation, not just for fun, but to outrun discomfort. And while the relationship looks full, the emotional well can remain untouched. You're quick to suggest, let's go do something. But sometimes your partner wants to just be, to sit, to breathe in the silence. And your Gemini moon may panic at that. Stillness can feel like a vacuum. Your mind races. Are we okay? Are they bored? Is this relationship slowing down? You may misread quiet companionship as detachment, but really it's a deeper invitation to connect without stimulation, to exist in parallel presence, not just shared action. This tendency also shows up in how you manage emotional friction. You shift to doing instead of discussing. If something feels heavy between you, you might suggest a walk, a movie, a project. Not because you're indifferent, but because you believe action will realign you. And sometimes it does. But other times, your partner may feel you're skipping over what's real, using activity to bypass intimacy instead of deepening it. And in long-term relationships, when novelty fades and activity becomes routine, you may begin to feel distant without understanding why. The shared motion is still there, but it's become hollow. You're checking the boxes, but no longer arriving in the experience. And because your moon needs variety to feel emotionally awake, you may start looking outward. More texting, more side conversations, more distractions. Not out of disloyalty, but out of a nervous need for movement. To grow here, you must practice presence inside the activity. It's not about doing more, it's about feeling more as you do. Fold laundry with tenderness. Cook together while making eye contact. Drive in silence sometimes, letting your body speak what your mouths don't. Let activity become an extension of emotional connection, not a substitute for it. You must also learn that love doesn't need to be efficient, that some of the most intimate acts are slow, repetitive, even boring, that helping your partner with a task they don't enjoy can be more connective than planning an exciting date, that giving your attention fully, even during mundane routines, is a form of generosity your Gemini moon often overlooks. And when you allow yourself to stay in the shared experience, not planning what's next, not narrating the moment, not reaching for stimulation, you begin to feel something new. Stillness as satisfaction, closeness without commentary, togetherness that doesn't need activity to feel alive. Because for you, Gemini Moon, the gift isn't in how much you do together, it's in how deeply you engage. When you stop using motion to avoid emotion, your presence becomes magnetic, and your partner doesn't just enjoy doing things with you, they feel met by you. Fully, playfully, patiently. In motion, yes, but also in me. Intimacy of allowance with Moon in Gemini. When you accept everyone's story except the one that's still unfolding. Moon in Gemini prides itself on openness. You are curious by nature, accepting of contradictions, and fascinated by the ever-changing layers of people. You welcome difference, celebrate diversity of thought, and often say, "Be whoever you are, I just want to understand you." But the intimacy of allowance asks for more than understanding. It asks you to release the need to understand at all. And that is where your moon hesitates. Because when someone's emotions become nonlinear, nonverbal, or too quiet to explain, you begin to pull away, not out of judgment, but out of disorientation. You need things to make sense. When a partner shifts, emotionally, spiritually, or in how they express themselves, you rush to categorize. You ask questions, you want to know what changed and why. You try to organize the data. You mean it lovingly. You want to keep pace with their becoming. But in your need for clarity, you sometimes press, where you should simply witness. You ask for insight when what they need is air. You push for coherence when they are still unraveling. This creates a subtle friction. Your partner may feel they need to report their evolution to you, that they must have language before they can be loved, that their uncertainty needs to be smoothed out before they can be held. And while you believe you're being supportive, they may feel surveilled, gently policed by your intellect, by your alertness to inconsistency. You don't mean to demand emotional neatness, but you often require narrative, and real allowance doesn't ask for a story. It offers space. You struggle most when people change in ways that don't match who they were in your mind. You fall in love with someone's words, their tone, their patterns. You record them. You memorize how they emote, how they laugh, how they speak when they're safe. And when those signals shift, your moon feels unmoored. You start reaching for the version you knew, hoping to restore it with the right question or comment. But they're not gone. They're just growing. And your intimacy must too. You also resist the messy middle in yourself. You'd rather pivot than pause. Rather reframe than sit in your own contradiction. You allow yourself to explore ideas, but often deny yourself the right to not know. You tell people, "I'm working on it," or "I figured it out," when really you're still in the fog. You extend allowance to others in theory, but rarely live it for yourself in practice. To develop this intimacy, you must begin to normalize not knowing, in yourself, in your partner. You must let the emotional weather pass through without trying to name the storm. You must resist your instinct to organize the chaos, and instead, sit beside it. Hold someone when they don't know what they feel. Let them cry without a reason. Let them change without having to explain. Let yourself do the same. This isn't easy for your moon. Silence can feel like distance. Uncertainty can feel like threat. But allowance is an invitation to trust the process, not just the person. It's choosing to stay close, even when you don't understand. It's saying, "You don't need to make sense to me to be loved by me." And when you do this, when you loosen your grip on narrative, when you soften your fixation on clarity, you become something rare. A partner who can witness evolution in real time without resisting it. A safe place for others to become. A safe place for yourself to become. Because true allowance is not about being open-minded. It's about being open-hearted. And for your Gemini moon, that's the next great lesson, to let love live in the question, not just in the answer. Intimacy of giving with Moon in Gemini. When you offer so much attention but struggle to give from stillness. Giving for the Moon in Gemini is agile, inventive, and often verbal. You give through thoughtfulness, through words, through ideas tailored to the moment. You send the meme that makes them laugh. You remember the exact phrasing of something they once said and bring it back at the perfect time. You ask the questions no one else does. Your giving is quick, responsive, and alive. But the intimacy of giving is not just about what you offer, it's about how you stay with the giving once it lands. And this is where your moon flits before it roots. You are generous with your attention and you love to make people feel seen. But once the gesture is complete, your mind often moves on. You check the box, lovingly, but lightly. You give and then go. Not because you're careless, but because your moon seeks motion more than absorption. You thrive in the exchange, the spark, the immediacy of connection. But intimacy of giving asks for something quieter. Presence after the act, a lingering, a willingness to let the gift land and settle in someone else's heart without rushing toward the next moment. There's also a hidden fragility in your giving. You often offer from your mind, not your depth. You curate experiences, share insight, offer clever solutions, but you don't always give from your emotional core. You fear becoming heavy. You fear being too much. So instead, you give generously in ways that keep you in control. You give pieces of yourself that feel manageable, but the parts of you that ache to be received often remain withheld. Sometimes your partner might feel the asymmetry, that they are being offered access, but not intimacy, that your gifts come with sparkle, but not with emotional anchor. They might say things like, "I love how you show up, but I don't always feel you in it." And you might be confused, because in your world, you're doing so much, but in their body, your giving may feel like a breeze, light, lovely, and gone before it sinks in. You also tend to give when it feels interesting, when the energy is flowing, when your mind is alive. But in the duller, more emotionally complex seasons, when giving looks like showing up again and again with no spark, you might hesitate. You don't abandon. You just emotionally mute. You say the right things, but your heart is a little less available, because routine giving bores you. And boredom for Gemini Moon is a form of disconnection. To mature this intimacy, you must learn to give from stillness, to ask, can I offer presence even when there's nothing new to say? Can I be generous even when it doesn't feel mentally stimulating? Because true giving isn't just about what you say or do. It's about what you stay for. It's about giving time, space, attention, not just in bursts of brilliance, but in gentle repetition. And with yourself, you must stop trying to earn love by being endlessly interesting or helpful. You are not valuable because of how much you can offer. You are valuable whether or not you perform connection. Let your giving become less about exchange and more about reverence, less about being appreciated, more about honoring the bond. Because when your Gemini Moon slows down enough to give not just ideas, but presence, you become a rare kind of lover. One who doesn't just light up a room but warms it. One who doesn't just talk about love but shows it. Listens for the quiet yes. Stays after the laugh fades. And learns that giving, at its highest form, is not a gesture. It's an arrival. And you, dear Gemini Moon, have so much to arrive with, if only you let yourself stay long enough to be received. Intimacy of receiving with Moon in Gemini. When you're eager to be understood but struggle to let love fully land. Receiving love for the Moon in Gemini is complicated. You want it. Affection, praise, thoughtfulness. You light up when someone notices the small details, the ways your mind works, the moments you didn't think anyone was watching. You want to feel emotionally mirrored. But when that love finally shows up, not as an idea, but as a gesture, a long embrace, a gift with no explanation, a compliment that goes deeper than wit, you may feel a sudden urge to move away. Not because you don't want it, but because being still enough to receive it makes you feel disarmed. Your instinct is to deflect, to make a joke, to change the subject, to say, you didn't have to, with a bright smile. You receive through agility, through quick responses and clever appreciation. But true receiving asks you to pause, to let the moment imprint, to allow yourself to be affected, not just acknowledged. And that is unfamiliar to your Moon, which processes love through speed, not stillness. There's a nervousness under your charm. You fear that if you really let love in, if you feel the depth of someone's care, you'll owe something back. Or worse, you'll become dependent. And dependency to you feels like entrapment. Your Moon associates love with mental movement, with shared curiosity, with playfulness. So when someone offers you emotional devotion or quiet devotion without strings, you don't always know how to metabolize it. You flutter, you thank, you redirect. Over time, this creates a quiet paradox in your relationships. You're constantly craving connection, but rarely allowing it to land in your body. You keep the channels open, texting, talking, making plans, but something in your emotional core stays slightly untouched. Your partner may feel like they're pouring affection into a vessel that never quite holds it. Not because you're absent, but because your receptivity is often cerebral, not sensate. You must learn the difference between being admired and being held. You love compliments, but they're safest when they stay playful. When someone says, "You're brilliant," you shine. But when they say, "You make me feel safe," you get quiet. Vulnerability without explanation feels like pressure. Intimacy without dialogue feels like surrender. And surrender to your Gemini moon can feel like a trapdoor beneath your feet. But here's the truth. You're not being trapped. You're being invited to stop performing, to stop translating, to let love arrive in full color and stay long enough to touch you beneath your cleverness, because you are lovable beyond your wit, beyond your adaptability, beyond how much fun you are to talk to. Practice receiving in small moments. When someone gives you a compliment, don't make it about them. Just say, "Thank you," and breathe. When someone reaches for your hand, don't turn it into a game. Let it linger. Let your skin understand what your mind keeps skipping. Let affection affect you. Also, learn to ask for what you want, not because it proves worth, but because it honors your need. Can you stay with me a bit longer? I want to be held, but I don't know how to ask. These are not weak statements, they're brave ones. They remind you that intimacy isn't just something you offer, it's something you deserve to receive, fully and unfiltered. And when you do, when you finally let someone love you past your surface, you feel something rare: peace. The mind quiets, the internal dialogue softens. You stop curating connection and start inhabiting it. You begin to believe that you are worth loving, even when you're silent, even when you're uncertain, even when you don't know how to give back yet, because real receiving isn't a transaction, it's a resting place. And your Gemini moon, so busy dancing from thought to thought, deserves to finally rest in someone's hands, in someone's care, in the truth that love, when real, doesn't need to be earned, only allowed.